He leaned in close as we walked toward the entrance, his hand gripping my elbow just a little too tight. "Remember what we talked about," he whispered. "These are serious medical professionals, not the nurses you chat with at work. Try not to embarrass me tonight." I didn't say a word. I just kept walking beside him through those grand doors. But when the hospital's chief of medicine rushed over, embraced me warmly, and announced to the crowd, "Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker has arrived," the color drained from my husband's face so fast I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. For 3 weeks, my husband had been coaching me on how to behave at the American Heart Association's annual gala. "Stand up straight when you're talking to the doctors," he'd say over breakfast, as if I didn't know how to carry myself. "Don't use too much medical jargon that might make you sound like you're trying too hard." He'd remind me each night before bed, "Just smile and let me handle the networking. These are the top cardiologists in the country. They don't want to hear about routine checkups." I listened to every condescending remark. I nodded through every patronizing suggestion. I let him believe I needed his guidance to navigate a world that was supposedly far above my level. The entire time, I was the one who had been invited to deliver the keynote address. The entire time, the Pioneer Award in Cardiothoracic Innovation sitting in a display case with my name engraved on it was waiting to be presented. The entire time, the chief of medicine had been texting me about my speech, asking if I needed anything, telling me how honored the association was to recognize my work. But my husband never asked about my day, never inquired about my cases, never bothered to connect the dots between the gala invitation addressed to Dr. Meredith Collins and the wife he thought needed his protection from embarrassment. My name is Meredith. This is the story of how I let my husband underestimate me and how it cost him everything. I'm 38 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years becoming someone my own husband never bothered to know. I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon specializing in minimally invasive valve repair. That's not the same as being a general cardiologist, though most people outside the medical field don't understand the difference. I don't prescribe blood pressure medication or run routine stress tests. I open chests. I hold beating hearts in my hands. I fix things that other surgeons have written off as impossible. Last year, I performed 212 surgeries. My mortality rate is among the lowest in the country. I've been published in the Journal of Thoracic and Cardiovascular Surgery 14 times. 3 years ago, I developed a new technique for mitral valve repair that reduced recovery time by 40% and has since been adopted by surgical teams across North America. But you wouldn't know any of that by looking at me on a Tuesday morning. I show up to the hospital at 5 a.m. in comfortable scrubs and running shoes. My hair is usually pulled back in whatever ponytail I can manage before my first cup of coffee. I drive a 10-year-old Subaru that's practical and completely unglamorous, with medical journals perpetually stacked in the back seat. I don't wear designer clothes to the OR because designer clothes don't survive 12-hour surgeries. For most people, and certainly for my husband, I looked like someone still working her way up, not someone who had already arrived. Ryan and I met 4 years ago at a charity fundraiser. He was a corporate lawyer at a prestigious firm downtown, the kind of place where partners drove imported cars and wore watches that cost more than most people's monthly rent. When we started talking, he asked what I did. I told him I was a surgeon. He said, "That must be demanding," and immediately pivoted back to talking about his latest merger acquisition. I should have noticed then. The way his eyes glazed over when I mentioned my work. The way he nodded at the right moments without actually listening. The way he positioned himself as the successful one in our dynamic before we'd even exchanged phone numbers. But I was charmed by his confidence, his polish, his certainty about everything. I told myself his self-focus was just ambition, that relationships required compromise, that he would learn to value my work once he understood it better. He never did. We got married 18 months after we met. I moved into his downtown condo, the sleek modern space he'd bought as a bachelor investment, and refused to redecorate despite my presence. My medical textbooks looked out of place on his minimalist shelves. My comfortable furniture went into storage. Slowly, without realizing it, I started making myself smaller to fit into his carefully curated life. The comments started small. "You're working another weekend?" He'd ask when I had surgery scheduled. "Can't someone else handle that? Surely you've paid your dues by now." Or he'd glance at my outfit before his firm's holiday party and suggest, "Maybe something more elegant tonight." First impressions matter with these people. These people. As if the corporate lawyers he wanted to impress existed in a different stratosphere than the one I occupied daily, where I literally held human lives in my hands. I rationalized it. I told myself he just didn't understand the medical world, that he'd learn, that he meant well. But looking back, I can see how the pattern formed. How he positioned his career as the important one, the one that required sacrifice and support, while mine was just something I did to fill my time. The gala invitation arrived 6 weeks ago. Ryan came home from work practically vibrating with excitement. He held up the cream-colored envelope like it was a winning lottery ticket. "The American Heart Association Gala," he said, staring at the invitation. "Do you know who attends these things? The top cardiologists in the country, hospital administrators, medical device executives. One of my firm's biggest clients is presenting an award." He looked at me with a mixture of hope and concern. "I managed to get us on the guest list through a partner who knows someone. This could be huge for my practice." The wording struck me immediately. Not "we've been invited" or "I'd love you to come," but "I managed to get us on the guest list." As if he'd pulled strings to include me in something I wouldn't otherwise qualify for. "That sounds nice," I said, continuing to chop vegetables for dinner. "When is it?" 3 weeks from Saturday." He paused, studying my face. "I know these events aren't really your thing, but it would mean a lot if you'd come. I need to make the right impression. Not I'd love to spend the evening with you. Not it would be fun to attend together, but I need to make the right impression." As if my presence was a strategic consideration that required management. "Of course I'll come," I said. Over the next 3 weeks, Ryan's obsession with the gala intensified. He bought a new suit, not because his current ones weren't adequate, but because these people notice quality. He researched every name on the guest list he could find, building mental dossiers on who to approach and what to say. And he coached me. Relentlessly. "You should schedule a salon appointment for that Friday," he said one morning over coffee. "Professional styling. Nothing too elaborate, just polished." "My hair is fine, Ryan." "I know, but this is different. These are important people. Appearances matter." A few days later, "I've been thinking about what you should wear. Something elegant but not flashy. Classic. Maybe navy or black. We could go shopping this weekend, find something appropriate. I have dresses." "I know you do, but this is the Heart Association Gala. The women there will be wearing designer pieces. I just want you to feel confident, to fit in." To fit in. As if I were an outsider needing camouflage to infiltrate a world where I didn't belong. The night before the gala, he sat me down in the living room for what he called a quick strategy session. His expression was serious, almost grave, like a coach before the big game. "Meredith, I need you to understand how important tomorrow night is. The people at this event are at the top of their fields. Surgeons, researchers, hospital, CEOs. They're not like the staff you interact with at your hospital." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. "So tomorrow night," he continued, "just follow my lead. Smile, be pleasant, but let me handle the substantive conversations. These people can be judgmental about credentials, about pedigrees. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable if someone asks what you do and the conversation goes somewhere awkward." "Awkward how? You know." He waved his hand vaguely. "If they start talking about complex procedures or cutting-edge research, technical stuff you might not be familiar with. Just say you work in cardiology and redirect to something lighter." Work in cardiology. As if my 15 years of training, my hundreds of surgeries, my published research, could be summarized as working in cardiology. "I can handle myself, Ryan. I know you can. I just want to protect you from any uncomfortable moments. These people can be intense about medical hierarchies." He leaned over and kissed my forehead. "Trust me. This will be easier if you just let me take the lead." That night, lying in bed beside my sleeping husband, I thought about all the ways I'd made myself smaller over the past 4 years. All the times I'd downplayed my achievements or stayed quiet about my successes. All the moments I'd let him believe his career was the one that mattered while mine was just something I did between supporting his ambitions. I thought about the speech I'd been preparing for weeks. About the award with my name on it. About the chief of medicine who'd told me last week, "Your keynote is going to inspire an entire generation of surgeons, Meredith. I can't wait for everyone to hear what you have to say." And I thought about my husband sleeping peacefully beside me, completely unaware that tomorrow night, everything he thought he knew about his wife was about to crumble. The evening of the gala arrived with perfect late spring weather. Ryan spent 2 hours getting ready, checking his reflection from every angle, practicing his handshake in the bathroom mirror. I heard him rehearsing conversation openers, different ways to introduce himself that sounded impressive but not arrogant. I got ready more quietly. The salon appointment had gone well. My hair looked elegant without being overdone. The black dress I'd chosen fit perfectly, classic and sophisticated. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone who belonged at this gala. Someone who had earned her place there through years of dedication and skill. Ryan emerged from the bathroom and looked me over with approval. Perfect. You look wonderful. Exactly right for the evening. As if I'd passed a test I hadn't known I was taking. We drove to the hotel in his car. He was too anxious to let me drive, needed the control of being behind the wheel. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, and he kept taking deep breaths like someone preparing to dive into cold water. Okay, he said as we pulled into the valet line. Remember everything we discussed. Smile, be warm. But let me guide the conversations. If someone asks about your work, keep it simple. I work in cardiology. That's enough. I nodded. And please, he added, reaching over to squeeze my hand, try not to embarrass me tonight. These people are way above our level. Way above yours especially. I'm trying to get us somewhere, and one wrong impression could close doors permanently. Way above my level. The words settled in my chest like stones. I understand, I said quietly. We walked into the hotel's grand ballroom, and I felt Ryan's energy shift into performance mode. He straightened his posture, adjusted his expression, positioned himself slightly in front of me as if preparing to make introductions on my behalf. The room was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, elegant table settings, hundreds of the most accomplished people in cardiovascular medicine mingling with glasses of champagne. I recognized faces I'd seen at conferences, names I knew from journal articles, colleagues I'd collaborated with on complex cases. Ryan noticed none of it. He was too busy scanning the crowd for targets, calculating his approach, strategizing his networking moves. That's when Dr. William Chen spotted me from across the room. William was the chief of medicine at my hospital and one of the most respected cardiologists in the country. He'd been the one to recruit me 8 years ago, to champion my research, to nominate me for the Pioneer Award that was being presented tonight. When he saw me, his face broke into a warm, genuine smile, and he immediately excused himself from his conversation to walk toward us. Toward me. Ryan saw him coming and straightened even more, preparing his introduction, probably assuming the distinguished older gentleman was someone he needed to impress. William walked right past my husband without a glance. He opened his arms and embraced me warmly, the way old colleagues do when they respect and genuinely like each other. Meredith, finally. I was worried you might be running late. Everyone's been asking about you. He held me at arm's length, beaming. Are you ready for tonight? Your speech is going to be incredible. I've read the draft 3 times already. I could feel Ryan's confusion radiating beside me. I didn't look at him. I'm ready, William. A little nervous, but ready. Nervous? You? He laughed. The woman who performs 5 bypasses a week without breaking a sweat? Please. He finally seemed to notice Ryan standing there, looking like he'd been struck by lightning. And you must be Ryan. Meredith mentioned you. I'm William Chen, chief of medicine. Ryan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. William didn't seem to notice the awkwardness. Or maybe he did and chose to ignore it. Meredith. I need to steal you for a few minutes. The committee wants to go over the presentation order, and Dr. Yamamoto flew in from Tokyo specifically to meet you. He's been using your valve repair technique and has questions about the modified approach you published last month. He was already guiding me away, his hand on my elbow in a gesture that was protective but not possessive, the way a mentor treats a protege they're proud of. I glanced back at Ryan. He was standing exactly where we'd left him, frozen, his carefully planned evening unraveling before it had even begun. His face had gone pale in a way that was almost satisfying. Almost. The next 90 minutes were a blur of professional recognition and genuine connection. William introduced me to the head of the cardiovascular department at Johns Hopkins, who wanted to discuss a collaborative research project. I spent 20 minutes with Dr. Yamamoto, walking him through the modifications I'd made to my surgical technique, fielding his detailed questions with the ease of someone who'd performed the procedure hundreds of times. The CEO of the hospital network approached me to discuss expanding our surgical program. A medical device company executive asked if I'd be interested in consulting on their next-generation valve prosthetic. A young resident told me, with tears in her eyes, that watching a video of my surgery during her training was what made her choose cardiothoracic. This was my world. Had been for 15 years. The fact that my husband never knew it existed told me everything I needed to know about our marriage. I saw Ryan several times throughout the evening. He was trying to insert himself into conversations, struggling to find his footing without the James Chen connection he'd expected to exploit, without me standing beside him as his access point to this community that had never been his to access. He looked lost, diminished, like a man who'd walked into a party expecting to be impressive and discovered he was invisible. At one point, I watched him approach a group of surgeons, introduce himself as a corporate lawyer, try to steer the conversation toward investment opportunities in medical technology. The surgeons were polite but uninterested. They nodded, made vague sounds of acknowledgement, and then returned to their previous discussion about a new imaging technique. When they announced it was time for the awards presentation, I made my way backstage. Ryan was sitting at our assigned table, alone, staring at the centerpiece with an expression I couldn't read. The Pioneer Award was the final presentation of the evening. I stood backstage, listening to the previous recipients give their acceptance speeches, feeling my heart pound in a way it never did before surgery. This was different. This was personal. When the president of the American Heart Association took the podium to introduce me, she spent 5 minutes detailing my accomplishments. The breakthrough surgical technique. The published research. The hundreds of lives saved. The generation of surgeons I'd trained and mentored. It is my profound honor, she concluded, to present the Pioneer Award in Cardiothoracic Innovation to Dr. Meredith Collins. The ballroom erupted in applause. I walked to the podium on legs that felt surprisingly steady, accepted the Crystal Award, and looked out at the crowd. Ryan was sitting in the third row. His face was a mask of shock, confusion, and something that might have been the beginning of understanding. For the first time in 4 years, he was seeing me. Really seeing me. Thank you, I began, my voice clear and strong. This award represents 15 years of work that not everyone in my life has understood or appreciated. I've spent my career being underestimated, told that my goals were too ambitious, reminded to be modest about my achievements, coached on how not to make others uncomfortable with my success. I didn't say his name. Didn't need to. Half the room had figured out the story by now. Word travels fast in professional circles, and the tale of the surgeon whose husband didn't know who she was had apparently been making the rounds all evening. I've learned that the people who truly support you don't ask you to be smaller. They celebrate when you take up space. They're proud when you succeed, not threatened. I lifted the award. This belongs to every woman who's been told to dim her light so someone else could feel more comfortable. Don't ever dim. The standing ovation lasted longer than any I'd witnessed at these events. I saw colleagues crying, saw Ryan sitting frozen in his chair, the only person in the room not standing. After the ceremony, I was surrounded by well-wishers. Hands to shake, embraces to accept, business cards to exchange. I lost track of time in the warm glow of professional recognition and genuine respect. It was nearly midnight when I finally extracted myself and found Ryan waiting by the exit. His jaw was clenched. His hands were fisted at his sides. "We need to leave," he said tightly. The drive home was suffocating silence. Ryan gripped the steering wheel like he was trying to strangle it. I watched the streetlights blur past and felt something shift inside me. Not breaking, exactly. More like settling into place after years of being slightly off. When we got home, he finally exploded. "You humiliated me tonight. In front of everyone who matters." I turned to face him, keeping my voice calm. "How exactly did I humiliate you? You knew. You knew you were getting that award. Knew you were giving the keynote. Knew everyone there would know who you were. And you let me walk in thinking I was bringing my wife to a networking event. You let me coach you for 3 weeks about how to behave. I told you about my work, Ryan. Multiple times. You just never listened. You never said you were some kind of medical celebrity. I'm not a celebrity. I'm a surgeon who's good at her job. The fact that you didn't know that isn't because I hid it. It's because you never cared enough to ask. He stared at me like I was a stranger who'd invaded his home. In a way, maybe I was. The wife he thought he'd married had never existed. 4 years, I said quietly. We've been married 4 years, and you've never once asked me about a surgery. Never visited me at work. Never attended any of my awards or conferences or lectures. You had no idea who I was, Ryan, because you never wanted to know. That's not fair. It's honest. And I think that's what really bothers you. Not that I didn't tell you about tonight, but that you're realizing you never actually knew me at all. He didn't have an answer for that. I packed a bag that night and drove to my friend Amanda's apartment. She opened the door without a word, pulled me into a hug, and poured 2 glasses of wine. I told her everything. Not just about the gala, but about the 4 years leading up to it. The small dismissals and condescending comments. The way he'd positioned himself as the successful one while treating my career as an afterthought. The slow, insidious erosion of my confidence in spaces outside the OR. He never knew you, Amanda said when I finished. And the scariest part is, he didn't want to. She was right. Ryan hadn't married me. He'd married an idea of me, supportive wife, pleasant companion, someone who would enhance his life without ever overshadowing it. The divorce took 6 months. Ryan tried to fight it at first, then tried to claim I'd deceived him about my income, which was unsurprisingly, significantly higher than his. His lawyers eventually convinced him to settle reasonably after I documented every dismissive comment, every instance of him discouraging my career, every professional event of mine he'd refused to attend. I kept the condo I'd bought 3 years before we met. He kept his wounded pride and his carefully curated bachelor pad, which was apparently all he'd ever really wanted. The professional community was less forgiving of Ryan than the courts. The story of the lawyer who didn't know his wife was a pioneering surgeon spread through medical circles and beyond. He tried to leverage my connections after the gala, dropping my name to people who knew exactly who I was and exactly how he treated me. It didn't go well for him. Last I heard, he transferred to a different firm in a different city. A fresh start, I suppose. I hoped he'd learn something from all of this. I doubted he would. 1 year after that gala, I met someone new. His name was Marcus, and he was a biomedical engineer who specialized in surgical robotics. We were introduced at a conference where I was presenting on minimally invasive techniques and he was showcasing a new robotic arm his team had developed. We ended up talking for 3 hours about the intersection of technology and surgery, about the future of our fields, about everything and nothing. On our 3rd date, he asked if he could visit me at work. I want to understand what you do, he said simply. Not just the theory of it but the reality. Who you are when you're in your element. I almost cried. No one had ever asked me that before. He came to observe a surgery watch through the gallery window as I repaired a mitral valve using the technique I'd developed. Afterward, he asked detailed questions, not to show off his own knowledge, but because he genuinely wanted to understand. That was incredible, he said. You were incredible. The precision, the calm, the way your team moves around you like they know exactly what you need before you ask. I've never seen anything like it. Most people think it's boring to watch, I said. Most people are idiots. I laughed. It felt like the first real laugh in years. 6 months later, we moved in together. He hung my awards on the wall of our shared office without me asking. He attended my conferences, asked about my cases, celebrated my successes like they were victories we'd won together. The first time I came home late from an emergency surgery, exhausted and still wearing my scrubs, he had dinner waiting, not because he expected me to be grateful, but because that's what partners do. How did it go, he asked. I told him. All of it. The complications, the moments of fear, the eventual success. He listened to every word. You saved someone's life tonight, he said when I finished. It's my job. No. He shook his head. It's who you are. And it's amazing. That was when I knew I'd found something real. Not a man who tolerated my success or felt threatened by it, but one who saw it clearly and loved me more because of it. 2 years after the gala that ended my marriage, I ran into Ryan at a coffee shop downtown. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Or maybe I'd just stopped seeing him as larger than he actually was. Meredith, he said. You look good. Thanks. How are you? Fine. Good. The new firm is keeping me busy. He hesitated. I heard you won another award. The innovation thing. The Jacobson Medal. Yeah? That's impressive. He said it like the words cost him something. I saw the article about your robotic surgery program too. Sounds like things are going well. They are. An awkward pause. Two people who had once shared a life. Now strangers struggling to make small talk. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. About everything. The way I treated you. The things I said. He trailed off, searching for words. I was an idiot. I looked at him, this man I'd married 4 years ago, who I thought I'd loved, who I'd made myself smaller for without even realizing it. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just a faint sadness for the time we'd both wasted. Thank you for saying that. I should have seen you. Really seen you. I don't know why I didn't. I think you saw what you wanted to see. We both did, for a while. He nodded slowly. Are you happy now? I thought about Marcus, about my work, about the life I'd built on my own terms, about the awards and the research and the patients whose lives I'd saved, about waking up every morning knowing exactly who I was and never having to apologize for it. I am, I said. I really am. We said our goodbyes, and I walked out into the afternoon sunlight. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Dinner tonight? I want to hear about the Chen consultation. Also, I love you. I smiled and typed back. Love you too. See you at 7. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not because someone else had validated me or given me permission to take up space, but because I'd finally stopped waiting for permission altogether. The best revenge wasn't Ryan's failure or my success. It wasn't the awards or the recognition or even that unforgettable moment at the gala when everything he'd assumed about me crumbled in real time. The best revenge was building a life where I didn't need revenge at all. If this story of hidden success and public vindication made you cheer, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Dr. Chen walked right past Ryan to embrace Meredith at that gala. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this one. Subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss an upload.